of people are disappointed because even if there would be a free travel regime to the European Union, the people will have no possibility to use that because of the economical situation. And that's the key question.
Symbolically, it would be important, I think, though. It would send a very strong message, and it would be...
And we want that. We want that. We will struggle for that, for sure, for sure.
Not only is it a welcome from Europe, but it's also an end to what is, for a long time, been a very contentious thing for Ukrainians. The sort of slightly degrading process of having to go to embassies and justify yourself and explain that your intentions aren't criminal or that you can be trusted. And I think that's always been a kind of visa apartheid that has been very damaging for Ukrainians in terms of their self-image in a European context. So it would be a huge step symbolically.
But I agree with Evgen. I think no matter what we talk about the future, what we say about the future of European Union needs Ukraine. Even more, I'll say a thing which, you know, which we can say in Kiev, actually, you know, that the European Union needs Ukraine more than Ukraine needs European Union.
It's a strong
because
argument.
of the potential, because of the geographical position, because of very many factors, because of the richness of the land, because of everything.
They're probably the most, in some respects, probably the most European electorate in Europe at the moment is in Ukraine. And if you look at the figures for, say, far-right sort of anti-European sentiment, it's probably higher in almost every single EU member state than it is here. And the figures for far-right support, say, nationalist support in Ukraine are around, collectively, you know, somewhere around the 5% mark. In France, it's, what, 25, 30%, you know, and the Germans, the Austrians, the Dutch, everywhere else you look, it's a lot higher.
And I think that we should be brave enough to talk about that openly. Yeah. We should talk about that. We should say that openly, that yes, as Ukraine, we need Europe, but Europe needs us.
And I'd like to add, I'm not sure how many Europeans, they are ready to die for European values. And our guys in the eastern part of our country, they're dying every day for European values. Yeah. So, and that's why definitely EU needs Ukraine.
And talking about the war, and when I have the meetings with my friends in the Parliamentary Assembly, I'm always saying that that's not a war between Russia and Ukraine on the western borders. That's a war between the Russia and the Europe as a whole on the territory of Ukraine. And also the Europe should understand that. You are not helping us, you are helping yourselves.
Well, that's something that Ukraine needs to make more clear to the Europeans, because when you look at it, it's not really portrayed that way in the European press, and it should be. I agree with you completely. It's definitely the right messaging for it.
Yeah. It doesn't come across though, does it? Yeah, you're right. It's not something that European. I mean, there was an attempt when the conflict began, and there was, you know, everyone was exploring different ways of communicating, and there was one thing that I think very popular in Ukraine, but not internationally, a meme that went round on Facebook of showing like today Ukraine, tomorrow, and they had Russian tanks in front of the Eiffel Tower and Trafalgar Square, or the Colosseum in Rome. And it just doesn't seem very. People don't expect the Russians are going to go there. They're not going to do that, so they don't agree with this.
Ask Polish people and ask
the Balts and the Poles are different. Yeah, and this is and it's not necessarily a matter of them taking the little green men in the centre of Paris.
But on the other hand, they may be also afraid of that piece of border, enormous piece of border, which is under Russian control, you see? And you can get an enormous flow of, I don't know what, agents, I don't know, imagine, saboteurs.
You mean in terms of allowing them to come via Ukraine into... Yeah, well, I think that, you know, visa-free doesn't mean just like opening the gate and saying, in you go. And there's going to be a lot of restrictions, there's going to be controls. It just means you don't have to go through the process of going to embassies and applying in this sense. They'll still be able to control the flow. It's not a free-for-all. And
plus, Ukraine controls the border between the separatist-held part of Ukraine and the Ukraine-controlled, and that border is pretty well policed, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this will be. I mean, this will probably be a factor that would strengthen.
What we hear about the bribery going on the check posts. Well,
that's true. Talking about the message Ukraine needs to send to Europe, though, didn't Poroshenko on Monday say in his speech that this was 3 years ago, that Ukrainians rose up to finally stop Russian domination or to refuse Russian domination? I can't remember his exact words, but his rhetoric was very much all about, this was about stopping Russia and anti-Russian. rather than pro-European or for Europe as a whole. And it seemed to me that he used very much not the right rhetoric there.
Yes, maybe if I didn't just focus on that quotation, if there was. But you're absolutely right. That's an absolutely wrong message, because the people were not dying against. People were dying for.
For European values, as you put it just now.
Absolutely.
Well, that's definitely something that Ukraine needs to put more of an accent on in everything that it's doing, especially with its interactions. I mean, domestically, so it becomes visible to the outside world when it's broadcast on TV, but also in its international relations, because it's simply not something you see enough of.
But lots of people in Ukraine are not necessarily very pro-European. You hear a lot of people who say, I'm against Russia and I'm against Europe. That kind of line, I don't know what the percentages are, but there certainly is that kind of line that's used.
It depends what you mean by Europe, doesn't it? I think also, and if we talk about the EU as an institution, I think that's one thing. We talk about Europe in terms of European values. I think that's something that's probably got a broader base of support. But that would be true amongst a lot of people in the EU as well, where they would probably say, you know, it's a classic commentary from the anti-EU groups in Britain as well, where they say, well, you know, we love Europe, we just don't like the EU. You know, we love European diversity, we love European nations. So I don't think Ukraine, I think the visa-free travel, integration into the EU structures are all beneficial in a broad sense, but fundamentally, creating a European Ukraine is something that Ukrainians can do on their own. They don't need Brussels for that. They can do that in a sense of identifying and supporting these core European values in Ukraine.
But that's exactly where we started.
Yeah.
But recordings like that, they may be true, they may be false. You have to investigate them immediately. You have to be clear in front of your people. You have to, you can't hide things like that. That's very non-European.
Well, transparency, openness, this would be one of the core values, yeah, and it's a communications issue, I think, and you know, the urge to hide or suppress dangerous negative information is a big problem here. It needs to be addressed.
And another issue is that basically the country is not getting better. People are living wars. Protests are going to continue. They're going to grow. And what is happening today, that people who came to power, thanks to the protests, thanks to a revolution, are trying to hide. You understand? They're trying to deviate. We have protesters on the streets. They have lost their money, and the banks have disappeared, and most of them are very honest. So our TV stations in Ukraine, especially ones controlled by the government or through oligarchs or directly by oligarchs, show you an absolutely different picture. You know, it's homeless people who have nothing to do during the day. They walk streets, around the streets, get a couple of hryvnias, and there were protesters, and which is not true. And it is going to explode sooner or later, because you can't keep, you can't keep it closed as you want to. The kettle is going to boil.
Where's it going to go? Where's this anger going to go? Because I think, the idea of the phantom Maidan 3, there's going to be a third Maidan. Okay, Maidan 1 and Maidan 2 haven't brought the results. Why would Maidan 3 bring the results? I don't know if it's going to go in that direction. I think there might be,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that in any European country, be it Italy, Spain, France, Germany, whatever, when there are protests, you show them as they are. You don't try to tell, oh, well, those guys were against European Union. Well, they're lumpens. They're, undermentioned.
Hand of Putin.
Yeah, hand of Putin. Nobody says that, right?
Well, perhaps not widespread. It does happen, though. I mean, we had a lot of coverage of the anti-Trump protests in America where accused of being stage-managed by various classic, favorite sort of boogeymen of the far right, of the right wing.
But I think here it's very clear that the press is exactly as Savik said. It's being filtered through. It's going through either the government or oligarchs that are preventing the populations from seeing what's really going on, and that's quite worrisome.
Oh, yeah. No, without question.
But the difference is that in such a situation, in any, let's say, democratic country, the government tries to find the problem and tries to find the solution. tries to negotiate, tries to make the strategies or whatever, sometimes, or just mostly. In this country, they try to behave in an absolutely different way. They try to create an illusion that nothing had happened. And that's the big difference. And as Safik mentioned, the main problem is the quality of the government who became the government after the Revolution of Dignity. Because they came to power when the people want them to make reforms, to make the road to the, let's say, based on the European values, but nothing had changed. Compared to the Yanukovych's regime, nothing had changed. So the same way of governing, absolutely the same way of trying to hide everything in the country, the same way trying to show that nothing is going on, everything is okay, and that's it. And yes, we are not talking about the third Maidan, but I will tell you one thing. 1 week before the end of Maidan, no one believed that it will be finished. That way, that it was finished.
So from my side, I'm not completely agree again. So we are going in the right directions, but speed is too slow, and so we need real change and quickly, because it's especially in our century where you just quick or die.
So, when you go in the right direction to a train station, it's important not to miss a train.
Yep, that's true.
Thank you very much. See you next week.